my name's Sandy Kane. We're here at Cambridge University Botanic Garden. We're just waiting for people to arrive and join us on Facebook Live. So whilst we're doing that, I'll just sort of get my things together, and it's so lovely here in the school's garden and in the Botanic Garden. So welcome everybody to our Facebook Live today. It's spring. It feels a bit grey today, but we've actually had some warm weather and it's really good for your mental health and just feeling good about coming out of winter. We've got some noise, as you can tell, in the background. So if I'm shouting, it's to compete with the noise. We're having some work done on the terracarias, so unfortunately we're just doing that together with them today. So I'll speak loudly and hopefully you can hear me. Let us know if you really can't. Today I'm mostly going to be talking about seed sowing, what to seed sow at this time of year. I've got Helen here who's holding the camera. She's obviously socially distant to me, so that's another reason why I need to talk loudly. Please do write any questions that you have about anything to do with gardening in the text box, and I will try and answer them today. Invite your friends, let's have a party. Yeah, this is the perfect time to start seed sowing, and if you haven't already begun, now's the time to start planning and thinking about what you're going to seed sow. Actually, I've started already. I just want to show you some of the things that I've started. I'm lucky I've got a heated glass house that I can use, but here I've got red cabbages, kohlrabi. These are my chilies. Chilies, perfect time to start any of these now. And here I've got leeks. So these are sown into cell trays. The idea is that each one has 1 or 2 seeds in it, and they can grow to a good size before I plant them out. Here I've got my leeks. My leeks are looking beautiful. I sort of scatter them across this pan and they stay in here right until they're sort of a thin pencil size, and then I plant them out. So I don't prick these out. But here,
when will you plant those out then, Sandy?
So
the leeks.
So probably May. Probably about May. And these here are primroses. So I sowed these seeds in the same way as these. I scattered them across the top and I covered them with grit. And they've been sitting there all winter and they've just started to spring to life now, and I'll prick these out. And what that means is, I'll just quickly show you, is I'll get a pencil and put it underneath and then lift. And then I'll get one of the leaves, just the leaves. You don't pull the stems, because it doesn't matter if a leaf pulls off, and you pull it out like that, and then you pop it into a pot. I'll just quickly show you that.
That's a good tip, to firm it with another pot.
Yeah, you haven't always got all the fancy equipment, right? And then pop it in like that and give it a good water. This pot's a bit big for this one, but it's just to show you the technique, really. So, seed sowing. What do we sow now? Well, outdoors, you can start sowing a few things. I would choose a time when it's a sunnier day, maybe with some rain coming. Tonight is going to be -2, so I probably won't do it today. Here I've got some calendula. I would be sowing outdoors hardy annuals at the moment. So if you go into the garden centre and you're choosing plants and you want to get sowing outside some flowers, you're looking for hardy annuals, and now's the perfect time for sowing out hardy annuals. Anything.
And would you direct sow those,
Yeah,
Sandy?
you can direct sow them. Yeah, you can direct sow them now. Now's a good time to start doing it because it's just starting to warm up as the soil, and yeah, it's just starting to warm up as the soil, and we're getting a bit of rain, and of course rain makes a huge amount of difference.
What else are you sowing?
So today I'm going to show you strawberry seeds, and I'm also going to show you peas, and I'm also going to show you sweet peas. You see those?
So explain why you've been soaking the sweet peas.
Okay, we'll start with the sweet peas. So the sweet peas have a hard shell on them, and a lot of people don't do this. A lot of people just put them straight into the pot, and that's fine. On the packet it said that they needed to be soaked for up to 24 hours, and what that does is, you can see when you look closely, is it breaks that hard shell. Yeah. And so it gives them a better chance of all germinating. So I would be using a long pot for sweet peas. They don't like their roots disturbed, so you can either plant them directly outside or in a long pot. This is called a long tom, and I would be using general purpose compost rather than seed sowing, because they're going to be in there for a while. I've already cracked them to germinate, so I'm looking to like grow them onto a good size before I plant them out. So there's my long tom filled up. Here's my pencil or my dibber. I'll do it here so you can see. And in this pot I'm going to put 4. So there's 1 hole, 2 holes, 3 holes, 4 holes. You don't want them super deep because it'll only have enough energy to push its first leaves out so far. There you go.
I'll just show them in the pot, Sandy, so we can see how deep they are.
So 2 to 3 times the size of the seed, I would say. Cover those up. Put a label on them. Don't forget the label. Oh, it's so important.
Sandy, whilst you're writing the label, we've got a question from Emma.
Yeah?
What would you recommend for a very small patio garden that only gets sun in the afternoon?
What plants would I recommend for a patio garden? Well, containers is the way to go with a patio garden, and there's lots of plants that do like to live in containers, but if you've got a small garden and a patio, maybe something that's a climber. I try to have things that have more than one purpose, so a climber that's maybe scented, evening scented things, and things like honeysuckles, which would be beautiful. You can get a summer flowering honeysuckle, but you can also get a winter flowering honeysuckle, and they're really good for pollinators as well, so things like moths are encouraged into your garden with the scent, with the evening scent of things like honeysuckle. So I'd recommend things like that, but you know, loads of veg you can grow in containers. So yeah, I would look at what you can grow for veg if you're interested. So now then, I just wanted to show you some different sorts of containers you can use for growing. This is cell trays. So in a cell tray you would put 1 or 2 seeds with the hope of growing 1 plant onto a reasonable size before you plant it out. Good for things like lettuce, like I might have 5 different varieties of lettuce all sown in here.
And would you do individual lettuce in each cell, or would you scatter a few in each cell?
I would put 2 seeds in each cell, with the chance that one of them might not be successful, and if 2 of them were, I might pull one of them out. Here we've got seed trays. This is a big seed tray, this is a little seed tray. These are fantastic because what you can do in here is you can sow lots of scattered seeds in lines along here, so you can get lots of different varieties of seeds in a small space. And of course, at this time of year when you're starting to sow seeds, windowsill space is premium. So yeah, things like this are really, really good for sowing on. I just wanted to show you how to sow a tiny seed, because we showed you the big seeds there of the sweet peas, but here we're going to do strawberries, which are really tiny seeds. Now this is seed sowing compost. If you want to have a quick look, it's really fine, it has no nutrients. This one is peat free. It's a bit dense for me, so I'm just going to add a bit of coir to lighten it up. So seed sowing compost should be free draining, it should be light. Yeah, so
what would happen if you only have general purpose?
So I would
compost?
sieve it so you get the lumps out. So this is general purpose compost. It's really got big lumps in it, and what happens is if you've got a tiny seed with those big lumps, it's got more potential for drying out because there'll be a big gap next to it where the air will be, rather than being held.
For the small seeds, you really need the fine.
You do. In fact, you know, to be honest, all seeds have enough food to get the first seed leaves out, so they don't need any food whatsoever. But for texture, you need it fine and free draining. Nice. Okay. So press it down like that, so you've got a nice flat surface. If it's not flat, what happens is the seeds will all move to one side when you water, so you need to have it as flat as possible. So now I've got a container with a little pinch of sand in, and these are my strawberries. Okay, I don't know if you can see, but they're super tiny.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add all of those seeds to that little bit of sand. You only want a pinch, and then I'm going to mix them up.
And you would do this with all small seeds, Sandy?
Yeah, I do this with carrots. This is a really good way of sowing carrots into drills, because first of all you can see where the seeds have gone, and also if your carrots are too densely planted, they won't grow big enough. They'll compete with each other. So
you scatter sowing those, and when should people then expect to see germination?
Well, with every seed that you sow, you need to check what temperature is ideal for germination. And people often forget this and think that they're all the same, and they're not. So like lettuces will germinate at like 7 to 10 degrees. They'll probably prefer it a little bit warmer, but they don't want it too hot. They won't like it hot. Whereas other seeds, like chilies, they need like 20, 25 degrees ideally. So
we've got a question actually, Sandy, from Hiker, who said that, talking about temperatures and germination, how would you harden up plants that you've germinated inside the house, so at around 20 degrees C, to move them outside soon, because she's never grown from seed before?
Okay, so plants, when they're germinating, they need completely different requirements to when they're actually growing as seedlings. So where you might start things off at 20, 25 degrees, to actually grow healthy, if you keep them at that temperature, they're going to go really long and stretch. It's etiolate. So what you want to do then is to put them in your greenhouse, polytunnel, or a cold frame. This is not tender plants, by the way. If they're tender, then they don't want to get really cold, so you'll need to put them out later in the year. But hardening off basically is gently getting the plant used to being outside, and that means on a sunny day, pop it out in the daytime, in the evening, bring it in. Because it's a really young thing, it's really delicate, and it just needs to get used to the difference in temperatures. And if you do that for a few days, bringing it in at night, putting it out in the day, and then when the night temperatures aren't too bad, put it out for a bit longer. And what that does is it avoids it getting shock and stopping from growing. So look, there's my strawberry seeds, and I wouldn't be able to see where they'd been planted or sown if I hadn't added the sand. And what I'll do then is I'll sit it in a container filled with water so that it soaks up from underneath. If I was to pour water on top, what that would do is it would splash the seeds everywhere, and it's probably best just to soak them from underneath, and then as well the soil gets as much water as it possibly can in one go.
What about the larger seeds? So you've shown how to sow the sweet peas, and peas are a similar size, aren't they? Would you water those in the same way, or would you use a watering can for those?
So it's not as risky watering with a watering can for sweet peas, because they're big seeds and they're quite far down. But honestly, if I can water from underneath, then I do. I prefer to do that, because the soil will naturally take up as much water as it can, and that's the ideal amount of water in the soil. So that's always the best thing to do.
We've got another question from Claire.
Cool.
She has no garden at the moment, and she says she's a lazy gardener. Could you advise some easy to grow plants for coverage, but not Hebes?
To cover the ground. I've just started off some thyme indoors, some creeping thyme and some creeping mint, and I really like those. So it depends whether you've got sun or whether you've got shade. So mind your own business. They're really good in a little shady area. They'll cover the soil. But you know, I'm using strawberries to cover the soil underneath my fruit bushes. And what that does is it'll make a carpet of strawberries in the middle of the summer. So yeah, it really depends what sort of area you're choosing, and what sort of plants that you like to grow. So is it sunny, is it shady? The RHS are brilliant actually. If you look on the RHS website at advising, there's a little sort of page where you can say shady Mediterranean plants for ground cover, and they'll give you a whole big list.
Another question from Irene. Is it too late to sow flowering perennials?
No, it's perfect time to sow perennials. Some of the quick growing ones, like lupins, it's a really great time to start sowing some of the fast growing ones. This is the great time to get sowing most seeds. The only ones that I really wouldn't do are things like courgettes and tender beans. So those things are not yet. Hold off.
And linked to that, we've got another question from Susan. Her son loves eating cucumbers, and they've tried growing them, so they haven't had much luck. So have you got any tips on how to grow those? Because maybe it's too early now at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
definitely
cucumbers.
too early now. So most of those courgette family plants, pumpkins, courgettes, squashes, cucumbers, I sow those in mid-April, early to mid-April, so that they're a reasonable size, because they're tender, and any hint of cold, anything below 5 degrees, and they'll just expire. So mid-April, sow those sorts of things, plant them out mid-May, a sunny place, and also they're quite hungry. They like lots and lots of food because they give you lots and lots of fruit. So that's my best tip for those.
Another question from Michael. He's watching over in California.
Ooh, hi.
He'd like to know, it's a bit warmer there, I think, probably than here. Do baby tears last year after year in the UK?
Oh, I don't know what baby tears are.
No.
It's difficult because what might be called baby tears in California might be called something different here. Don't suppose you know the Latin name?
We'll wait to hear from Michael.
Okay, brilliant.
So anything else that you're sowing now, Sandy?
Yeah, so I want to show you a really fun way to sow peas. It's a great time for sowing peas. So the things that I am super sowing now are peas. I'm also sowing spinach, chard. I'm multi-sowing turnips. I'm multi-sowing radish into. But a fun way to sow peas with children, I'll just show you. So here we've got an old bit of guttering, and I went to the tip at the weekend, and I was like, oh, I've got old guttering, I'm not going to get rid of that, I'm going to use that for my Facebook Live next week. So kids, if you've got kids at home, fill up your bit of guttering with some multi-purpose compost, get your peas. Should I come up this end?
Yeah, that's
Is
good.
that too close?
Yeah.
Nice flat surface like that, and then get your young people to sow in fives like that. So it's like the face of a dice. Now the reason why this is good is because when you sow peas outside, although it's not too cold for them, this is the perfect time to sow outside. They like to get eaten. As soon as they start to germinate, they must smell like something delicious, because the mice are straight in there and they eat them. So what I do is with children, it's really nice to get them sown in a pipe like this, and then I'll cover them up and water them, and I'll grow them in the poly until they're just a reasonable size, and then when you've done with them, and hopefully I'll be able to show you this next month, you can just slide them straight into the garden.
And
all
Sandy,
ready to
if
go.
you don't have space to store some gutter pipe like this and you wanted to sow seeds, we've got a question from Richard who said, should I start my seeds indoors for better results? So if he hasn't got space for a gutter inside, what should he do with his
So
seeds?
windowsills are really wonderful for starting lots and lots of seeds. Basically, you've got an ambient temperature of between 15 and 20 degrees. Even overnight it's still warm, so it's the perfect time to start sowing seeds in containers on a windowsill. Containers need holes in the bottom in general, like the drainage here will go out the end, but if you don't have holes in the bottom, they can get sort of soaked in water and then rot. So that's one of the main things. If you haven't got regular pots, then make holes in the bottom of tins or yogurt pots or whatever it is.
And would you say it's better to sow seeds indoors rather than outdoors at this time of year, or does it not really matter?
Well, I mean, you're just starting now to sow outdoors, and this is plants that like it cold. Plants will prefer not to be moved, actually, because they get a little shock when you disturb them, when you transplant them out. But saying that, the great thing about starting things off indoors is you give them a little bit of protection and a little bit of an early push. So if you sow them indoors, you might get them out a month earlier than you would normally. You might stop the mouses from eating them or the squirrels or the slugs, whatever you have. Yeah.
Another question from Heike. She says it's a silly question, but I'm sure lots of people will disagree. How do you avoid overwatering little seedlings? Because I think that's something that's really easy to do, isn't it? So she says she's fine with watering in direct in the soil, but she finds it hard in pots because she's worried that she'll hurt the roots when she's sticking her finger in the soil.
Soaking them from underneath is a really good thing, but the best advice I can give you is pick your plant pots up on a daily basis. So, for example, when I sowed these seeds, I put them in a tray and then they soaked it up, and then I could feel the weight of the tray when I first did it. So that was as much water as it could take. And then I would wait until it looked light, so a day or two, and perhaps the heat in the house had made the top of the compost, so that one's starting to look lighter. But actually, when you lift it, it's still heavy, it's still heavy because it's soaked in water. So the answer is water from underneath where possible. I've got a few plants in my bathroom, and all I do is I put the plug in and then I put some water in the bottom and I just put my plants in there, or sometimes bigger plants I shower them, but baby plants like this, keep lifting them, because you can tell by how heavy it is how much water there is in the soil. And that's my best advice.
Rosemary has said that she's thanked you for the session. She said it's really interesting. She's just sown her pea seeds in root trainers. Will they germinate in an unheated greenhouse?
Yes. Peas are cold weather plants, and they will germinate in cold weather. They prefer the cold weather. When it gets hot, they don't like it. And they'll even cope with frost. So yeah, the best place you can have them is in a cold frame or cold greenhouse.
Is there anything else, Sandy, you want to show before we finish the session?
Now's the time to have fun with propagation and to really start. And I just wanted to show you what we've been doing today. Today we tried to propagate Newton's apple tree. So I bought some rootstock and we took some hardwood, the fresh new growth at the end of last year's growth, and then we've kind of joined them together. So this is the way that all apples are propagated, and we've kind of stuck the root to the stem and then I've covered it in tape and a bit of wax until that has healed together. The hope is that we'll heal that together, and that's called a graft. And actually all apples that you get are grafted. So I just wanted to show you that, partly because it's exciting that we've tried to graft Newton's apple, but just to show you a different way of propagation.
So Katrina has said thank you, this is really interesting, and her kids are really loving it, which is lovely to know, isn't it?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
we're here in the school's garden, and maybe Sandy, you can just give a quick overview of what you've got planted, what you've got to come in the garden over here.
Yeah, so the school's garden is an outdoor classroom, and at normal times we would have a lot of children in here playing and learning. And what we grow mostly is fruit and vegetables, and I've got a plan for growing different vegetables in each one of these raised beds, and I've also got some herb and flower and fruit beds at the end there. Actually, when children still come in now, I do encourage them to pull a carrot to see who can get the biggest carrot, and I personally think that getting kids interested in growing food is a really good way to get them excited about being outdoors, excited and knowing what it is that they're eating. So yeah, please do, if you live local and you need exercise, come here to the Botanic Garden and have a look. Come and have a look at the school's garden. But if you can't come, then please do join one of our adult learning courses. We've got loads of different courses on the website at the moment, and I myself am doing a lot of introduction to gardening courses. So the one in a week's time on propagation, I'm afraid, is full. But in a month's time, we've got the introduction to growing fruit and vegetables, which there's still places on, and there's lots more of them through the year. So it'd be really, really nice if you can't get down to the Botanic Garden for your exercise, to please do join one of those courses.
And we'd just like to say thank you to everybody from, we've had so many comments, which is wonderful, and people from the USA, and it's lovely to know where everyone is. So we've had fantastic comments. Sandy, if we've got any other questions, you can answer them in the comments box.
If you haven't had your questions answered, or if you've got something that you'd really like to ask, please write it in the text box, and I'll have a look later and try to answer your questions there. I really love the Facebook Lives, and I hope you do too. Now's the time to get out there, and happy gardening.
And we'll be back around Easter.
Yeah, the next one will be just after Easter, hopefully. All right, good to meet you all. Bye.